Hi, and welcome to a special edition of the Guna Ramble podcast, in the form of a video, of course. Now, you were very lucky the other week when we brought to you safe hands himself, David Seaman, which you all would have seen, and if you do want to see it, just go on our YouTube channel and it is still there. And now we're bringing you another legend. I would say just as important as David Seaman. It's Stuart McFarlane, who is the #1 photographer. We won't tell David Price this. He's the #1. Well, he might not watch it, so we'll be all right. The #1 photographer at Arsenal. You probably see him on Twitter, Instagram. He's even had a book out with Amy Lawrence. Absolute legend. So welcome to our show, Stuart.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very good.
Yeah.
Still struggling from the weekend, but
yeah,
I'm okay.
Yeah.
We'll get over it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So we're going to dive straight in. We'll talk lots of Arsenal and all that in sort of during the next half an hour. But photography. Why photography? What got you into photography? What is it about photography?
Well, when I was growing up, I lived in this sort of suburban street in South London, and our next door neighbour worked for Kodak. And he had a studio in his house, and he used to photograph all the family portraits of everyone in the street and stuff like that. So I was fascinated by photography from a real early age, but didn't ever think that I'd ever have a career in it. Yeah. Got to school, wasn't too bright, pushed towards the arts, photography and art at O level, and really took to it and was actually quite good at it. Wanted to go to art school and be a fine art painter. Got to art school and thought, oh, these people are really weird. I don't really fit in. Became a graphic designer. Got bored with that for a year, and then went back to photographic college. And I just really wanted to do sort of reportage and stuff like that. So I went to a really great college down in Medway and did a course down there. Spent most of my time walking around London taking pictures of people in their sort of everyday lives, and really loved black and white photography. And one of my lecturers on the course saw this ad for black and white printer to work for a sports agency in Islington, and said, "Look, you like black and white printing, go and try out for that." And I didn't think of anything about doing sport or anything like that. It never, I had a careers evening at 13 at school, and they brought this high street photographer in who sat down with my parents, and he basically just laughed at me and said, "You'll never be a professional photographer." He said, "It's dying, you'll never do that, And
so it wasn't anything in relation to you, it was more he was talking about the industry.
Yeah, he said
you're 13, I mean, how?
Yeah, he said it's a dying industry, Obviously his business is probably going through a bit of a bad spell.
Yeah.
So when I got to college, and this guy said, "Look, apply for this job, sports agency, right up your street, you love football and blah blah blah." So went for an interview. They put me down in the dark room. I printed 10, 15 different black and white prints. They showed me 50, 60 different sports stars and said, "Who's that?" And I was Kevin Keegan, Red Rum, Boris Becker, blah blah blah, whatever. And then about 2 months later, they said, "You got the job." I didn't even ask what the money was. And they were on St Peter's Street in Islington. That was 1988. And then the year after, obviously Arsenal won the League '89. And then, I don't know if you remember, Arsenal played France in a friendly the season after.
Yeah. Well, I don't remember it at the time, but
they played, and then Arsenal came to us, to Colour Sport, who I was working for, and said, "Can you supply any imagery from it?" So there was a link between us.
Straight away.
Following season, they said, "Can you come and do some photography for us?" So my first sort of job for Arsenal was in 1990, the year after the sort of '89. So it started from there, and that's really my connection as a photographer. Obviously I was an Arsenal fan, but that was my connection as a photographer, and it was a sort of dream come true, really, just to sit on the sidelines and take pictures of Arsenal.
Before we talk about the Arsenal connection, I mean, in those early days, who was your inspiration? Were there photographers out there that you were following, or was it...
Do you know, not... I'm not sure, really. There was people... I looked at pictures, but I wasn't that involved in the industry. I was more.
So names didn't matter. Make much of it.
No, I loved. I just love photography, but I love football. Those are the two sort of big loves of my life. So I didn't aspire to be anyone. I think once they put a camera in my hand, and I realised I actually might be able to be a
link the two.
Yeah, and then when I got into the job, I sort of struggled initially, and then I worked for a really good agency and got to meet some very, very top quality photographers. And one of them, a particular guy called Mike King, took me under his wing, and he was like probably the best sports photographer there's ever been. And he mentored me and showed me the ropes and stuff like that, and sort of pushed me on it. But I was never really that confident about my job. You know, I always just thinking I was sort of nicking a living. I know it's a phrase that's been used a little bit
recently.
But I just felt as though I'm just hanging in there, and that was it really. But you know, it's a decent industry to be in.
Yeah. So about your love for photography, then you talked about your love for football. Why Arsenal? What was it that attracted you to Arsenal? Not working wise, supporting wise when you were younger, and was it family? Was it?
Well, my dad was a Chelsea fan, and he used to take me to Chelsea a bit as I was a kid in the sort of 70s, and it was in the sort of early, mid to late, and it was a horrible atmosphere. No, I didn't like it at all. But the kid on my street, the best footballer on the street was a guy called Jonathan Fawcett, who's lost touch with years ago, and he used to run.
You might watch this. He might get in touch.
But he used to run around in an Arsenal kit, full Arsenal kit, and I used to follow him in a green jumper because I was a goalkeeper and a pair of white shorts. And my first sort of memory of Arsenal was sitting with him as a sort of 5-6-year-old, listening to LPs of the cup final, sitting in his bedroom or his living room, listening to that, and because it was sort of early 70s, Arsenal were a big star, and that was really where it came from me. And that's, it was always, he'd been to Highbury, I'd never been to Highbury, and it was always, you would love it. And when you finally go there as a kid, you think, my God, this is just an unbelievable place to be.
So then, you obviously, we know your two loves there. You're working for this agency. You're covering Arsenal. You're enjoying life, I guess. What then? Where was the transition between agency work, working full time for Arsenal? Where did that happen? How did that happen?
Well, my main sports there were rugby union and football. So I was doing England rugby tours, Rugby World Cups, British Lions and stuff like that in the Southern Hemisphere, and then coming back and doing the football season. And I really had enough of travelling, I was so exhausted. Yeah. And then in 2000, they approached me and said, we're looking for a staff photographer because we had this idea about the stadium. So I think the idea was, it all hinged on the new stadium. They wanted someone to record the whole of the build and stuff, the whole of the build of the new stadium. And they realised that there was value in building a historical library about Arsenal. I'd been on their case really because I was quite unhappy where I was working, and I couldn't really see any future in it. And I just thought, less travel. Obviously changed now because we're travelling everywhere. But
in theory at the time,
And when they turn around and say, we want someone. This is your remit. Build a historical library and record the building of the new stadium. I completely just jumped at the chance.
You mentioned rugby there, so I'm just going to show you this picture which people should be able to see on their screen. If you're listening to the audio podcast of this, you just have to go on our Twitter feed and you'll be able to see them, or on YouTube. So talk me through this kind of image. What was it? You sent me this as one of your...
Because I'd been working for this agency for a few years, and I'd struggled a bit with my work. And I didn't really think that was any good, to be honest. And I just thought I'll muddle along. And then this is the first game of the Rugby World Cup in 1999. And I was working for this agency, but for the Australian Rugby Union, and just covered the first game. Got this picture. No one else got it. It was an exclusive. And it won a few awards.
Did you realise you had got this when you first took it, or was it when you look back you thought, bloody hell, I've actually got it?
I had an idea, but in those days it was all film. So that was in Cardiff. So after the game, jumped in my car, drove back to London, hand developed my film. So basically 7 hours after you take the picture, you looked at it and thought, man, that's not bad. Gave it to the guy who was the boss of the company, and then I got in my car and drove to Scotland for a game the next day, so didn't sort of sleep for 20 hours or whatever. And woke up the following morning and there's a guy from the International Rugby Board phoned me and said, do you know who the Argentinian is who's sticking his finger in someone's eye, and it was all over the papers and stuff like that. And it
Did you know it was, or not?
No, I think they do now, but
yeah.
But it's the first time I'd had a picture that was sort of acclaimed universally within our industry, and then I started thinking, oh, actually, maybe I'm not that bad. And then I had a run of that tournament. I started hitting a bit of form, and I got a lot of really good pictures then, and my reputation sort of went up.
Okay.
And it made me a little bit more ambitious. It gave me a lot more confidence, and just made me think, actually, maybe I am quite good at this. And that was really the turning point in my career, really.
Okay, cool. So you've joined Arsenal, and you're working full time at Arsenal. How has the role changed from your first day at Arsenal as a full-time employee to now, or has it not changed? Is it?
Yeah, my first day, I turned up in a suit. I brought my own computer, and I remember walking out onto the at lunchtime. I walked out onto the East Upper, opened my packed lunch on my lap, and looked at the groundsman cutting the pitch and thinking, I've made it. This is it. This is me. Sitting in this like, oh my god, I've never worn a tie before. It was quite, but I just thought, I love this now. And then, we were so lucky at Highbury. My office was above the first team dressing room, and everything was so close, and you were so close to everyone. And really, the big change is probably the club's is so massive.
Yeah.
The role essentially is more or less the same.
Just more of you, I guess.
There's more people. When I started, I was on my own, and 2 years later, David Price joined me, and we've still got a team of 2.
Okay.
But it hasn't really changed. The technology's changed, and social media's changed the way that we work. And really, initially we just supplied pictures for the Arsenal programme. And then it was the website, and then it's the website magazine program, and now it's
social media, digital.
And then, we syndicate through Getty Images. We've got nearly 200 offices around the world, so there's a massive change in.
So the job hasn't changed, but the delivery, I guess.
Delivery's changed, and the way that we work has changed. We've gone from film to digital, so I'll go on pre-season tour, and I come back with 200 rolls of film, and spend a week in the office developing stuff, and no one will see a picture. Now you take a picture, and it can be on the website in 2 or 3 minutes.
So what's a typical day like in the life of Stuart McFarlane? I mean, probably a non-match day. I think match days people can probably guess, but we'll go into that maybe. But in terms of just a normal day,
non-match days, we differ from other photographers, club photographers, that we're office based a lot of the time.
Is that in the training ground, or is that?
That's at the stadium, Highbury House at the stadium. So we'll both get into the office, and we've got office duties. We file our own pictures. We have requests from all over the club for certain pictures. A lot of filing. There's other bits and pieces we're involved in. I was involved in all the building of the statues outside the stadium, all the image consultation. So.
No day's the same, really.
Not really. That's the boring stuff is the office stuff. The stuff you want to do is when you're out working with the players. Our work is quite varied. So we work at the academy from the under-8s up to the moment they go to Colney, up to the first team, the Arsenal ladies. All the corporate stuff we do sponsors and stuff like that. We do a lot of work with the Arsenal in the community, going around schools and photographing coaches, working with kids and stuff like that. So. That's the one good thing that it is so varied. So I might be at Colney for 3 days a week, and then 2 days I might be in the office. But I've never been an office person.
Yeah. Well, you've only worn a suit once in your life.
Yeah, and then we're luckily enough at Highbury House. It's all open plan, but we've got our own office. So blinds are down, doors closed. Put a bit of music on, and we can chill out a bit.
Yeah. Okay, you talked about the fun stuff, which is that sort of player interaction and getting down to the Colney, and I mean, we with the social media world, as fans, we do see a lot of it on Arsenal Player, on social media, and all the kind of fun stuff that's happening. And it seems like probably that has changed a little bit over the years. But that sort of player interaction now, as a fan, as a professional, how do you deal with that? And like, are they just like normal blokes at work? Is it you know, what, or is it, you know, footballers are footballers, so taking part in activities and having themselves pictured and stuff, it's not their number one goal, but how do you deal with that?
Well, when I started, they hated it. I remember.
Yeah, they weren't used to this.
I joke with Steve Bold about it. When I used to ask him to do stuff, it'd be like, no way, you're not doing that. But now it's completely different. Photographers, players never wanted their picture taken, but now it's completely different. Now it's good for them because it's for their social and stuff like that, and they accept that that's part of the job now.
Okay.
It was like pulling teeth initially trying to get players to do stuff, but now they understand the game. You know,
I guess they've got agencies pushing them as well for images because
we work with them and we work with their agents and we supply them. You know, after every training session we supply images to them for their social.
Okay.
So it's good for us because it's say our comms team who are constantly asking them to do this, can you do this, can you do that? They're in a really tricky position because they're always asking and they're never giving anything back, and it's really tough for them. But with us, it's easier for us because we can ask them for that. Can you do this shoot for us? Yes, and we can give you this back and you can use it. So it's nothing to do with me or pricing,
it's just the way it is.
Yeah, and it's good to be able to give stuff back to them because they appreciate it, and also you've got a little bit in the bank with them as well.
Yeah. Okay, so we move to sort of match days. What's your? I mean, generally, just quickly summarise maybe what your match day working day is like, but then also focusing on those sort of moments, that sort of pressure of a goal was just let's talk happy moments. You know, Ian Wright's just broken the record, or Thierry Henry's just scored against Liverpool on Good Friday. You're a fan, you're buzzing inside. How do you deal with that pressure of, I need to get this shot, I need to get a good shot of this because it is my job at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's a very surreal experience. The last game I went to watch, I watched Arsenal play, not live. I think was Arsenal-Spartak Moscow in the Champions League. My car broke down on the way to the airport.
Oh.
It's the only Champions League game I've ever missed. I've missed one out of all the ones we played in.
Wow.
So I watched it in a pub in Islington, and I walked out halfway through. I couldn't watch it because I was an absolute nervous wreck. I could not concentrate. Put a camera in my hand, and I'm fine. You know, because that's how I've watched football for the last 30 years. I mean, I remember when '93 when we beat Spurs in the Cup semi-final at Wembley. I was at the other end. Tony Adams scored, and I put my arms up. I fell back off my seat in front of all the Spurs fans. All the photographers looking around at me like, "Who's this dickhead?" But then you sort of train yourself now.
Well, that's experience, isn't it? You learn from.
It's experience, and you don't. You know, I find there are games where I get a little bit nervous, and you start to shake a little bit. I mean, I can remember the 2005 penalty shootout. I could barely hold my camera because I knew it was Patrick's last game, and I was sweating, and I knew we'd been terrible, and those sort of moments. But I suppose it is been more professional. But there are moments where you just do, even in certain league games, at certain times you start to think away from your work, and then you start to think as a fan. And because I know all the players and stuff, you want them to do really well.
Of course, yeah.
And then when someone makes a mistake, you know, you just feel so bad for them
because you know them. Yeah.
But you have to just try and sort of focus and think this is the most important thing because ultimately you want to have a good set of pictures afterwards.
What's pressure to you in your job? Obviously, pressure not when Arsenal play in terms of performances on the pitch, but what's sort of night before, forget the match day feelings, you know, who we're playing or, but what the night before is, what makes you a bit nervous, or when do you feel that pressure that you have to deliver in your role?
I've been in the game long enough that I might think about the game the night before. It's a big game, it's a cup final. I do a lot of pre-planning with we might get a couple of other photographers in, so I plan about what we're going to do, accreditation, where we're going to go,
just to help out.
Stuff like that. But generally, I think I'm quite good in my planning. I don't really get too flustered. I try and think about if we can do something different on a certain match day. And David's brilliant. He's pretty creative as well now. So home match days, away match days, we get very little extra access, but home match days we can basically go where we want. So we try and think to maybe do something a little bit different. But I get into the stadium maybe 4 or 5 hours before match day, go through our list of jobs. We'll get a couple of corporate jobs and check presentations or sponsors pictures, stuff like that, and then team arrival. And when once it, in a way, once the game kicks off, you can actually think about. And then really, it's really weird because you're massively in control of everything until the game kicks off. Then after the game kicks off, you've got absolutely no control. It's like then what is going on.
You're reacting to what happens on the field.
And really, I always say to younger photographers, if it happens in front of you, you have to get it. If you don't get it, you're not very good at your job. I finished at the end of a game. I've never been happy with my shoot at the end of any game I've done in 30 years of being a photographer, because you always know you could have done better. If I'd have sat there, I'd have got this, or
it's pot luck at times.
And it always spurs you on, because if you shoot a game of football and you've got absolutely everything there perfectly, then it'd be like, okay, tick the box, that's it, I'm finished now. So I always leave the game disappointed, whether we've won cup finals or whatever. Even if we won that stuff, I always think I could have got this, I could have got this.
Perfectionist there. Has there been any moments where you think, oh, I missed that? And I mean, you don't have to name the actual example, but how have you dealt with it? And because we all do, we all have jobs where we think, oh, I wish I'd done that. I wish I'd got that.
I've missed loads of goals, but I've not missed any big goals in big games. The biggest moment I missed was last game at Highbury, when after Thierry scored a penalty and kissed the pitch. And I don't know if you remember the old North Bank, they had sort of pits that photographers stood in front of them. And as he scored, Thierry's walking forward, and this steward stood up in front of me, so I was on him, I knew I had it, stood up in front of me, and I was screaming at him. And then Thierry kissed the pitch, stood up, and the steward turned around at me and said, oh, I'm sorry about that. And I mean,
so you missed him actually kissing him?
Yeah, and really, if we'd had an HR department, I wouldn't be sitting here today in my language. But that was...
You would have filed a complaint.
Because I think if you miss stuff yourself, then you beat yourself up.
But here you were in the position.
I was ready. I've been lucky, and I'm pretty good at what I do. I've not missed cup final goals, goals that won us the league. I've not missed one. Yet.
Okay. Well,
who ever knows when that will happen again?
We'll touch wood. And in terms of those player interactions, like who over the years has been, good fun, good characters that you've enjoyed working with, and I don't really care if they left the club under a cloud or anything like that. Just generally, when they were here, who was fun?
I've never had any issues with players.
No, but who was the ones you really enjoyed working with?
The ones they enjoy are the crazy ones, really, like a Bowie, like Lucas Podolski, and really they're the sort of invincibles, who are a little bit more. They're quite a sort of reserved sort of bunch, And I'd say probably a Bowie's been the most fun, because he's so unpredictable. Even on training pitches, you would never know what he'd do.
Is there any examples when he just did something that you just thought, what are you doing, but took it anyway?
Well, I'll tell you what, one I think I've said it before when I did something else. I went to his house on one afternoon to do a magazine shoot, and he answered the door, and he was like just in a pair of shorts with a full Indian headdress. And he was just really fun to work. Spent the afternoon with him. I went round to Colo Torre's house and played pool with him. Taught him how to play pool for an hour before he took any pictures. I've had some really good fun. I've done. There's been some. I'm just trying to think. I mean, are there any?
Do you feel you're mates with the players at times? Because at the end of the day, you're all colleagues. You're all working for the same company. They're just in the spotlight more, and they probably get paid a little bit more. But do you feel you are mates with some players at least? When they leave, is that it? Do you lose contact pretty much?
Do you know what I find is, I don't know whether this is unique within Arsenal, but because I've never worked at another football club, but there's a thing at the training ground where people come in, and the first time you see someone every day, you shake their hand, and that staggered me when I first started working for
anyone
Arsenal.
you see for the first time,
Anyone,
you shake their hand.
when the players come in, they go and shake. It doesn't matter if you're, if you're a cleaner or if you're manager, from top to bottom.
Yeah. Okay.
And that was a really nice thing for me, and it's great for the younger kids to actually see that that's what happens, and that's what happened with sort of Invincibles, and all the way up to now, everyone does it. And what I find now is, I consider some of my friends and some acquaintances, but when I see these players, like you've got them in that picture, when I see them now and I go to shake their hand, they don't shake my hand, they give me a hug, because they look at me, because all those people in that picture, I was at Arsenal before them, and I think when they see me, they think of their good times when they were at Arsenal. So I go to shake their hand, and it's like they hug me like not a long lost friend, but a friend, someone that they look at me and they can remember the good times they had. So whether there's a thing, isn't there, friends or football friends? But I've got some good. There's a couple.
Just for
there's one there in the middle who phones me quite a bit.
just for those audio viewers, we've got a picture of the Invincibles, left to right, Sol Campbell, Freddie Ljungberg, Thierry Henry, who Stuart was just talking about, who rings him, Dennis Bergkamp and Robert Pires. What players?
But the lovely thing about this is just taken on a normal training day, and I just shot it. I didn't think anything about it, but it's one of those pictures that 10, 12 years later, you look at it and think, wow, that's not a bad thing.
I think you tweeted this recently, or you put it on Instagram recently, because I do remember there was a lot of debate. I mean, are you, we'll talk about it in more detail, but are you kind of aware that when you post a picture, you do create a bit of debate, and not like healthy debate maybe, but things like who was the most influential here, or who was the... Are you aware of that, or is it just you don't really care, you're just posting because you found the picture and you like the picture? And
I think there'll be something that will remind me of a certain picture, or I'll be looking for a date back in time, and I suppose in a way for me as well, because the club's got so big, and I think a few fans think the club has lost a bit of identity with the fans. I like to show the fans, that the supporters, that I was here then. I'm an Arsenal fan like you. And I get a fair bit of stick on Twitter and social media, but I'd like to think that most of the people who pay their money and stand behind me on the terraces and in the seats actually think that he's an Arsenal fan. It hurts when it hurts him as much as it does when we lose.
Just going to look at a couple of your other sort of favourite pictures. I'm going to go to this one because it just looks. I don't know. I think I can see why you like this, but just talk us through it.
It was back in the day of using film, not digital, manual focus. So it was it's a very technical picture, and also for me, it just says so much about Thierry, how high he is off the ground, and it's one of my favourite pictures of him. He's the easiest guy to photograph. Even now he's easy to photograph.
Did he like to see them sometimes? Like, did he ever spend a bit of time just saying, "Show me a couple of my good pictures"?
Well,
anything like that?
What I used to do is every time he reached some sort of milestone, I would do a montage of every picture. So when he got to 50, I put 50 pictures together. When he got to 100, when he got to 150, 200, and he said he had them like framed in his house. So, but the amazing thing with Thierry is when I did his 200 goals, I think it was, he went through every one and he said, "That's the wrong picture. That goal should be there." He knew exactly. Right. Wow. He knew exactly. Every single goal. For me, it just says so much about Highbury. I mean, the amount of, we probably had a couple of thousand extra people, but to actually look through, and you've got the houses, and it's bar Everton and the old main road. It's a massively unique stadium, and to have that moment there as well. I'm so proud of it, and for me as well, that I'd like to think maybe in 50 years. People will look back at that and they'll say, "My God, look at that stadium! Look, there was houses there." So historically, it's such a nice thing for me to. Yeah,
you feel you've helped people remember maybe in 40, 50 years.
And ultimately, we're building a historical library so people can look back in 50, 100 years' time and say, "This is what the players look like. This is what the fans look like. This is what Arsenal Football Club look like." So really, it's just building an archive for us.
Okay. So it kind of fitting that we've moved from Highbury to the Emirates here with this image. Is this just because of the sun?
It's just a pretty pitch, isn't it?
Well, that's what I thought. I think
I was probably walking back from the pub then. I thought,
in the summer.
It's just a. You don't get too many nice sunsets in this country. It's either grey or it's not. So it's just a pretty picture.
Yeah. Fair enough. For audio viewers, again, this is just one of the Emirates on a nice summer's evening where you can see the sun going down and purple skies. Again, watch the YouTube video or check our social media for the images. Move to this one, which looked like it was a couple of years ago, maybe three years ago.
For me, that's because the training ground's so private, and that it's. I feel I'm so lucky to be allowed to go in, and there are days that it's just the manager, the first team squad, and me, and that's it.
Okay.
And I get so much access. Whether, if and when the boss goes, whether that will change with a new manager,
you don't know.
But it was just a really nice pictures to show the sort of concentration and them all listening to the manager. But also, you'll only see that from us. You won't see that
anywhere else. No one else is there.
No, and that's it. And I'm very lucky to get that access. But then I feel that I've worked for a long time.
Yeah. I worked hard for this.
And I didn't start by going on my first day, going in and standing next to the manager when training was going. Year by year, I've taken an extra step closer to and been respectful.
Yeah.
And never got in his eye line and always moved around and. I've dropped my cameras and collected footballs and moved goals and stuff like that because I think you work for the same.
Yeah.
Same
objective at the end of the day.
We go away on pre-season tour. Pricey and I help the kit men out, set kit up, and carry bags and stuff like that. Because I think it's important that people see that you're not only there to take, you're there to help as well. And that's always been my work. That's always what I felt. We're all part of the same football club, so we should all work together.
And does that, or does your own but your own behaviour, I suppose, change when Arsenal have had a bad defeat? So it's because naturally the players are down, the manager's down. Does that, are you more in the shadows in that because you think, or does it not make a difference really?
When you travel, you don't speak. After we lost the Champions League final, I didn't say a word to anyone on the way back. And I think you just gauge the moods. But if you're at the training ground the next day, any football club would be the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Game's over, move on. You look forward. You go for the next game. But you have to be respectful. You don't have to be stupid. I've seen people up there who are after a bad result who are not behaving professionally, in my opinion. Whereas I will take a step back.
Is that because they're not a fan and it's just a job to them? Which
I'm not sure really. I think maybe it's partly that, and maybe it's partly certain people's idea about I have to get my work done, so I have to go on the front foot. But I would rather not get it done and then be respectful towards other people's moods and their and the mood of what's going on at the football club.
All right, talk me through this image. This is again for audio viewers. Chelsea Arsenal this season, the game that ended 0-0, but Mustafi thought he had got the winner. We had one of our away fans, I actually saw him, he was earlier on that day actually, I saw him at the bottom, but he had jumped out to celebrate with Mustafi. Mustafi thought he had scored, and it was, the stands were great because we thought we had got the winner at Chelsea, and talk me through the picture. The picture shows the fan literally jumping, and it looks like he's about to jump on Mustafi.
I just initially thought, I really love those trainers, especially when they got hauled out beside me. I was thinking, I need to know who he is, and I need to know what they were. Yeah. But it was just a really funny. Yeah. I've got a couple before. I got one at Middlesbrough years ago of Robert Perez scored, and he got a fan on behind celebrating. Okay. With Sylvan Walter behind him. And this is for me the modern day equivalent. It was just a nice. It's probably not the image that the football club would want to portray, but I just thought it's a really nice picture. And I think the guy, I got a message from him on Instagram, and I think he got arrested and released. But it's just, and then Musti put it on his social, and it was something like, at least two of us thought it was a goal.
Yeah, he did.
But it's just a nice with the faces and stuff like that. All the Chelsea fans. It's just a nice picture. It makes me, and I think with photography sometimes it can't be. It's just a picture that'll make people smile. I think that's going back to what I was saying. In 30, 40, 50 years' time, people look at it and go, "Why is this? What's going on with this guy's trousers? Why has he not got any socks on? And why is he there?" It's just that I think it's a
people talk about it.
It's a timeless picture, I think.
You mentioned it just there about sort of social media and how Mustafi put that on Instagram and all that sort of stuff. But from an Arsenal point of view, but also just a photography point of view, how has kind of things like Instagram and social media changed the way you work? 'Cause I mean, at the moment, anyone can be a photographer, really, with the phone, Instagram, not with the quality as someone like you would do it, but they have fun. They can do it as an amateur. How has that changed your view? Are you sometimes now thinking that even you, like if you leave this place and go back and there's a nice sunset, would you think, I'm going to take that because that just looks nice because of social media?
Yeah.
Would you have done that 20 years ago?
Would I have done it? Probably no, because I wouldn't carry a camera with me. But we had a point at the football club where, before social media, Instagram and Twitter, and we were just sort of plodding along, and then I wouldn't say that we were undervalued, but I think but sort of Arsenal TV was coming in, and that was the big thing, and it's unbelievably massive compared to us. We're just a small part of our media team. Then all of a sudden social media came in and people started looking at pictures. And then we got more, can you do this, can you do that? And now the hits that we get through on our stills pre-match and training and features and stuff like that is incredible. And I go on holiday and I don't take a camera now, I take my iPhone. And they are incredible, and you can shoot. I've shot stuff on my iPhone that I've had published in national newspapers. Wow! And do you know?
So those shots you showed Mexico, wasn't it?
All on an iPhone. But I love the idea. I'll go back to this old gnarled professional photographer in 1980, whatever it was, 70, whatever, saying to me, "Photography is dead." I'd like to go and find him now and say, "Look, every single person thinks they're a photographer now." And you know what? If you can take a half decent picture, I've got no issue with that. I love the idea that people love photography. I was a bit of an Instagram snob for a couple of years, but I love Instagram now, and I love looking through it. And there are so many people who are good at taking pictures, but they don't realise them. And I think something like Instagram and iPhones and Samsung or whatever phone you use, they can actually make people actually think about moments in time rather than let's video everything. And I think that's really good. I think and for me as a photographer, I think it makes people value more my work than they would have sort of 10 years ago.
So I think that's the thing with stuff like Instagram, and I don't think people are ever thinking they're professional photographers by doing that. They're just having a bit of fun, and Instagram gives them a platform to kind of just share that fun with friends, family, with whoever. If I had to ask you to make a prediction of how photography will look in 20 years, what would you say? Not necessarily at football, but just in the world. It depends on, I know, technology and how phones will develop and all that sort of stuff, but it's a tough question. I get it.
No, it is. I mean, I'd like to think that I'd still be working in 20 years, but but who knows?
I mean, what I mean is, can you see sort of your big Canon camera or whatever make you have?
Nikon.
Nikon
only.
But when you take a shot, it instantly goes onto some social media, instantly uploaded to websites. Things, things like that help maybe
that nearly happens now. I think do you know what, the only real change will be how fast the networks go that you can get pictures uploaded. At the moment, you can shoot something in your camera, it can go straight to a picture desk, and it can be up in 30 seconds. We work a little bit independently because we like to edit our own stuff, whereas a lot of the bigger agencies will shoot someone else, they might never see their pictures. But ultimately, I think with us, we'll have other people and we'll shoot stuff, and I'm not really looking forward to it, to be honest. We'll shoot stuff, and we won't see it until after it's been sat out, and that for me will be very sad, because I've always been someone who wants to look at all their pictures and do their own edit, and
So at the moment, do you edit all your pictures?
Everything, yeah. So pitch side we shoot on the laptop, edit, and
So
it goes.
you have your laptop pitch side during games, and you're doing a bit of both, and you're sharing the workload.
And most other photographers will send straight to an agency, or they get someone to write. But I just think this is, I'm the photographer, this is my stuff. I completely appreciate how other people work, but I want to edit my own pictures. I don't want someone else, because I've been in the game for 30 years. I think I know how to crop and what a good picture is. I wouldn't trust anyone. I don't even trust Pricey. I should do though.
Yeah, well, let's hope he doesn't watch this. Yeah, no, that's all really interesting stuff, and it's just, I don't know. I think for fans, I think social media is really given a platform. I think without social media, would people know who a Stuart McFarlane or a David Price is?
Well, sometimes it's probably not a great thing to.
Yeah.
I had people on the train on Sunday saying, you should give your seat up for us after that performance.
Yeah, well, you weren't on the pitch. Just before we finish, just talk me through quickly this book, the idea. Yeah. How did it come about? Obviously, you and Amy Lawrence is doing some wonderful things. I mean, we've got the '89 film coming out. It will be out by the time people watch this. But what was the idea? How did that come about?
Well, as I said earlier, I worked with Amy on her Invincibles book, and then she came back to me a few months later and said, "Look, so many great pictures. Why don't we try and do a book together?" And I said, "Okay, come up with an idea." And she said, "Look, the manager's 20 years. What do you think? Have you got 20 years of pictures of him?" I said, "Oh, I have." So that's how it started, really.
Yeah.
And it took a fair bit of time to put together, because we've got, I think, over 1 million pictures in our picture library. Amy worked out the chapters.
That's a famous one, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's Pricey in the back there. Look, not taking a picture.
Watching you.
So it took a fair bit of time to put together, but and you're always a little bit concerned about fan reaction towards the manager, and I think we were lucky when it came out because we were on a decent run. Yeah. I've done a few books before, rugby books and a couple of football books, but this is the one that I'm really proud of.
Yeah.
And and somewhere along the line, I'd like to do my own book.
Yeah.
Just an Arsenal book, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing book, isn't it? It's just, and I was actually, I think I won the first ever copy.
Oh, right,
signed by the boss. It was, it's proudly in my memorabilia stand at home. So
it was great. It was great fun to do, and it actually made me feel like a proper photographer.
Yeah.
rather than just, there's a lot of snobbery. Rather than just a club photographer.
Was David Price a bit jealous?
No, he's got stuff in there. He has got a credit in there somewhere.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Couldn't do it without him.
Yeah. Nah, definitely not. Cool. Well, Stuart.
Okay.
We've enjoyed the last sort of. It's gone on a little bit longer than we planned, but we did enjoy it, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Keep snapping away, I guess.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Cheers, mate.